Okay, so I want to today do the next two psukim that the Hagadah brings, which is focused around the shibud and the hishtadlus that Klal Yisrael does, that they davened. So the pasuk says, "Vayarei otanu hamitzrim kamo shene'emar hava nitchakem alo." One second. "Vayarei otanu hamitzrim vaya'anunu vayitnu alenu avodah kasha." Okay, so they afflicted us, and they put avodah kasha, right? So now we need to understand this shibud well, because this is very it's very important to understand what was the tachlis of the shibud, because this is going to be, again, the theme that we're developing through the Hagadah is that there's a story being told by the Bala Hagadah that there was the creation of this new entity called Klal Yisrael, and that was Machayev, a new Hagadah in the Bria, right? And every detail that the Bala Hagadah is bringing is basically part of our DNA. Right? That's what was happening through the process of Yetziat Mitzrayim, and we've mentioned a couple of times that you see this from the fact that it obligates. In other words, whenever we see that these things are machayev us, whenever they create a chiyuv on you, a mitzvah on you, so that shows that this thing is shaykh to you ba'etzim in a very deep way. So the shibud is critically important to understand, and it's not just haya. It was a shibud, and Baruch Hashem, it's over. That's not the way to understand the shibud. And the raya is there's a mitzvah called moro. And we're going to say that. Right? In other words, the fact that there's a mitzvah called moro, which is behedya about the shibud, right? And we learned that also in the sugya of Haseba, that you don't lean then. It's the whole thing of the moro is that it's maro, it's bitter. Right? So if that's still machayev you now in a mitzvah, so that means that the shibud is actually something that you take with you. Something that was in its ancient history. It's something you've got to understand that. It's still with you now, right? So we need to understand the shibud well, okay? So, fine. So it says, "Vayarei otanu mitzrim kamo shene'emar hava nitchakem alo pen yirbeh v'haya tikrena milchama v'nosafu al sonenu v'nilcham banu v'ala min haaretz." So they afflicted us, and the Baal Hagadah brings this pasuk, hava nitchakem alo. That's at the beginning of Shemot, Parashat Shemot, where Paro makes reasons, right, why he's got to be mishabed the Jews. Right? That's like this is the prototype anti-Semitism. We need to be tough on the Jews because they're taking all the money, they're doing this. They're calling one is because they take all the money, and so they're not giving enough money. It's like kol minei shtuyot, right? Each time, right? Okay. But the ikh is that Havanit Chakimalo, Rabbi Yitzchak Isaac, he gets into a nakuda over here. It's a very important nakuda to understand. He's not the first person to ask this kasha. The Rishonim deal with this question. This is why were the Egyptians punished? Why were the Egyptians punished? We just said in the Brit Ben Ptarim that this was a gzeira. It was a gzeira. It was destiny that were right. Yadoa teda ki ger yeh zarecha be'eretz lo lahem va'avdum ve'inu otam 400 shana. It was a gzeira. Hakadosh, this was built into the grand plan. It was built into the grand plan. So why do they get onished? And we'll see, later the Shirat Hayam, right? They mamash got onished. Each kafi, the real Rishonim died slowly, and the ones that were less, they died quickly. It was the mamash ne'enash. Right, on everything they did. Why? Right? So, without getting into the sugya of Bechira and Yediyah, which is something there's just the Rishonim all are marich on very much. That on the one hand, Hakadosh Baruch Hu is running the show and he knows everything, and on the other hand, you have Bechira. Well, ignore that for now. Right, that's not the issue that I want to focus on, but. Right. The Rambam actually brings this as one of the as one of the, when he's dealing with the sugya of this, right? This Inyan, that the Mitzrim got nenash, even though there was a gzeira on this. So it's fine, okay. But just to Rabbi Yitzchak Isaac, the way he deals with this, he says it's true that there was a gzeira, but they didn't have kavanah for that. They weren't mechaven to be makayim the ratzon haboreh. That wasn't what they were. That wasn't what they were doing. They was havanit chakim alo. Right? They have their own. They have their own reasons. The Jews are dangerous, and we've got to subjugate them. And later on, the Mefarshim said they did more. They were mosif. Right? Yoter min amidah. Okay, fine. But here, the Bala Hagadah is being megala something unbelievable. That this shibud was a gzeira. It was a gzeira. And that means that it was critical for Klal Yisrael to go through this, and we'll see why, to make them into Klal Yisrael. The Mitzrim didn't have that kavanah. They didn't have that kavanah. They weren't mechaven. We know that there was a bris bein of Yisrael. They didn't have that kavanah at all. Right? But nevertheless, that's what the purpose of this was. In other words, here Hakadosh Baruch Hu is being masovev the world with Klal Yisrael in mind. Ad kedei kach, even when they're not being mechaven for that, it's actually all for Klal Yisrael. In other words, that's the beginning of this new hashgacha that was coming into the world when Klal Yisrael were created. That now the whole movement of the world and everything that's happening, all the hashgacha, even the macro hashgacha, right? In other words, the way that the goyim are functioning and the way that they're doing things, it's actually all for Klal Yisrael, and it doesn't actually even matter what they're thinking. They're having their cheshboinus, right? They're having their cheshboinus, and this is the depth of the hashgacha, which it's something that the Gemara Chazal say it's something that you cannot understand. It's something that is beyond the scope of our ability to lavin, right? To go to its depth. That Hakadosh Baruch Hu is being masov of everything, all at the same time. That even though this guy's having bechira, but it's actually all part of the plan, and all these things, and they seem steerers, and it's so complex and multi-layered, and all of this, it's all happening here, and it's starting here. That they're having all of these kavanas that they want to. Their bechira is that they're Rishon and they just want to, wipe them out because they've got their own reasons. But no, that's not actually what's going on. What's actually happening is the shibud that was the gzeira all the way back then, and Hakadosh Baruch Hu was being masov of the hashgacha with their bechira in mind and bringing all of this to the forefront, so there can be a chefza called Klal Yisrael, because that's what the whole world is about, right? That's the first thing that the Bala Hagadah teaches you, right, on the shibud. That, yeah. Right, don't make that mistake. Right, they came with their havanit chakim alo, but that's not what was going on over here. The way that the gzeira was expressed lemaisa in the world was through the havanit chakim alo. You see that all of their kavanas are be'etzim irrelevant, and they'll get their ownership because that was their bechira. That's what they chose to do. But it's all actually part of the process of building Klal Yisrael. Right? Okay, right. That's a very choshev nekuda. Right. Okay. Fine. V'yanunu, and here the next two, and even really in the next pasuk, there's certain nekudas of the shibud that the Bala Hagadah is going to bring out. V'yanunu k'mo shenamar ve'eshtimu alav tzarei misim leman anato b'sivlotam v'yaven arei misnol leparoi pitom ve'et Ramses. So they were breaking down Klal Yisrael, and everybody knows Pitom and Ramses. The Medrash Chazal says it was pointless work. It was building on quicksand, and v'chulei, and everything was just they were working l'shem working. Now that means that the point of the work was not in the tachlis of the work, right? In other words, it wasn't that there was a purpose to the work, and that's why the hashgacha elyono was masovev, that the way that they were working them was that it was the work. It was just the work itself. That was the point of the work. It was the work, right? And higufa, because Hakadosh Baruch Hu was actually being maramez, magala to them, that there's something deeper going on. This is like it's insane what they were doing. Like, why would you do that? You've got a massive workforce, and say, like, do something with them. Just if you think about it from the Egyptian perspective, do something. I mean, build roads, build things. You'll gain from it. You'll gain from it. If you're smart, right? If you wanna, if you wanna build your country up and you've got free workforce, so yalla, build roads, build things. You can make yourself money from that. You can prop yourself up. You can make yourself more powerful. Make chariots for your army. Make weapons. Like do things. No. Even Paro, right, was even the Hashkach Elyon was Mesoviv. That even Paro himself was making them do pointless work. He just wanted to make them suffer. There, Hakadosh Baruch Hu was actually sort of being Megala to Klal Yisrael that it's not about the fact that there's something deeper going on over here. It's something pnimi. It's something inside that is the purpose of the work, and that's also on the next thing.
So the Egyptians did that of their own volition. That's a bechira. Hashem made them do that. Hashem made them choose to subjugate for subjugation's sake.
No, lav dafka. No, you don't need to say that. No, afuch. They came with their bechira, right? They came with. That's why they got nenash.
So being extra above and beyond.
You can say it like that. Yeah. I don't want to commit myself because this is a big sugya in the Rishonim. Like, how does that work, right? But I don't want to commit myself to the teretz. But whatever the teretz is, what I'm just pointing out is that here you see that Hakadosh Baruch Hu is already being mesavev the hashkocha for Klal Yisrael, even with the bechira of the amim. He's even, in other words, despite the fact that they're making their own bechira choices, is actually serving a purpose towards Klal Yisrael. That's nora v'ayom. That's an unbelievable thing. How do you get around that with bechira? There's rishonim. There's multiple drachim.
What purpose did it serve?
Huh?
What purpose was that?
We're going to see. Right, yeah, right. So here's so again, right. V'yitnu aleinu avodah kasha, right. Shanema v'yavdu Mitzrayim et bnei Yisrael b'farech. So Chazal say on this that they were giving work that was parech, and Chazal say that they gave the work of the Gvarim to the Nashim, and the Nashim to the Gvarim. Everybody was doing work that wasn't matim to them. It wasn't matim to them. That's called that you're doing work that's keneged your koiches nefesh. Right, that's what's it. Again, I heard this from I heard from one of my rebbes, Rav Leuchter. He said this. You see this. This is very, very choshev a thing that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is teaching us. That there's no problem be'etzem working. A person can work very hard. And adarabba, adam la'amol yulad. Right? A person that doesn't actually have a ratzon to work hard, that's actually an unhealthy person. Most people, they want to work hard. You want to do something with your life. Adam la'amol yulad. Right? That's part of the problem that you see in the world outside of you nowadays. That society is so spoilt now, and everything's on a silver platter. So they start, finding nonsense to dedicate their lives to, because you've got to dedicate your life to something. You've got to work, right? But here's the nekuda. The thing that is impossible is to do things that are neged your koiches and nefesh. For the young Avrechim here, right? When you've got to babysit, right? Because your wife's got your wife's got some sort of appointment. You're stuck at home babysitting. You want to shoot yourself, right? It's like the worst thing, right? You can get up at 5:30 and work, do the things that you're, learn and go to work and do that, and you can kill yourself, and that you can do. And the other rubber, it's like geschmack, right? You get simcha from yourself like that. But to do this thing, to change the diapers and all this sort of stuff, it drives you nuts, right? You can't. It's like you can't. No. You're happy there playing with the yo-yo all day, right? Okay, said it, all right. All right. So we have to. You definitely, I thought would have been able to relate to that, but anyway, when you're doing things that are keneged your koiches and nefesh, it's the worst thing, right? It drives you insane. You don't have the kalim to do that, right? And it's impossible. Right? So here's the nekuda. You see here both of these things that the Baal Hagadah is showing us that the reason why HaKadosh Baruch Hu had to do this to us it was to break them. It was to break Klal Yisrael. It was to break them down. It was to strip them of everything that they were. Right? It was to get them to the core of who they were. We're going to see this in the next pasuk. And here is the Ma'aseh Avos Siman Labonim of what we had at the beginning. Avraham Avinu, we said the whole thing started from Avraham Avinu. Avraham Avinu was told, Lech lecha me'artzecha u'moladecha mebeit avicha. We said that it came from Terach, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu ripped him away from there, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted Avram to understand that what you're doing now is not a progression of your avos. That's not what's happening over here. You're starting something new, and maybe you've got to come with a clean slate. That's exactly what the avodah here was for Klal Yisrael. This shibud. The Chazal tell us that they were influenced very strongly by Egyptian culture. They were slaves. They didn't have their own identity. That's what happened. So it says later when we get to the Shira Sayam, Halalu ovdim avodah zara v'halalu ovdim avodah zara. Klal Yisrael weren't in a good place. We know they were in the Memtes Shari Tumah before the Yitzia. So here's the thing: when you are now going to represent Hakadosh Baruch Hu and you're going to be the ones that carry the Torah, you can't have that in you. You can't approach Torah with your when you're grafting things from outside cultures onto your Havana in Torah. Then you're going to just warp the Torah. You're going to be krum. HaKadosh Baruch Hu now wants to create an that their whole tafkid is to represent him, and they have to be the Makablei Torah. You can't do that when you're progressing from Egyptian culture. You can't do that, right? You've got to wipe that out. You've got to totally break that away from you, because you're starting something new. You can't come with your musagim and your axioms and your way of understanding things and your Egyptian binoculars. You can't do that. So what he does is he totally breaks them down till there's nothing left of them. They're downtrodden. They've got nothing. They're totally broken. Yeah.
So he needed to have all of that shiva, all of that of them assimilated in order to.
100%. Yeah. Rabbi Yitzchak Isaac here brings the mashal. He brings the mashal of this. He has on the psukim. I told you his stuff is fantastic. Right? He says when you plant a seed, the first thing that happens is that the seed self-destructs, and then the tree grows. Right? In other words, when you want to change something to a new chefza, right? The original thing has to die. Right? That's what happens. Right? That's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is doing. He's creating a new bria. He's creating a new bria called Klal Yisrael. So if you're going to be a new bria, a new thing, the old has to go, and you can't come with anything. You can't come with any baggage. You can't come with that. And that's what Yisurim are. And that, and we'll see that later, that's why it's part of our DNA. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives a person, lo aleinu, bar minan, right? Yisurim, but it's always there to educate you. It's always there to educate you. It's always there to open your eyes to a new horizon, right? But here, it was done to the extreme. Because here you're creating the seeds of Klal Yisrael, and you can't have anything. You can't have anything there. You have to break yourself down to the core, and that's what he did, and that's where you see what the response from Klal Yisrael. The response was v'nitzak el Hashem Elokei Avotenu v'yishma Hashem et kolenu v'yar et onyenu v'tamalenu v'tlachatzenu. Right, that he broke them down all the way till they got to a place of tza'aka, which is tefillah. That was the response.
The third pasuk. This
is the third pasuk. This is the segue into the third pasuk. That they got to a point of tefillah. Right. Now. Yeah. Let's do these two things together. Right. So what's the two droshes of the Bala Hagadah over here? ונצעק אל אדוני אלוהינו ולהבתנו כמו שנאמר ויהי בימים רבים ההם וימת מלך מצרים ויאנחו בני ישראל מן העבודה ויזעקו ויתר שבתם אל האלוהים מן העבודה. Right, so he broke them down more and more and more. וימת מלך מצרים, and Chazal say over there that וימת מלך מצרים, Chazal say over there that means that he was a Metzora. Paro became he got Sarat, and his Chartumim told him that the way that you cure it is by bathing in Jewish blood, and they killed all the babies. You're like, lo aleinu, right? Yeah. So in other words, here's the Nukudah. Vayamad Melech, it got the worst. It got the most pressured. Right? V'yanchu, and they sighed. It's just they couldn't. They were totally broken. Min ha'avodah v'yisaku v'yitar shavatam Elohim min ha'avodah. And then they broke and they davened to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And what did that do? What did that do? What did that breaking them down, where they got to their core, and their response was that they davened. Veishma Adonai kolenu, kamo shenema, veishma Elohim et naakatam, v'yizkor Elohim et brito, et Avraham ve'et Yitzchak ve'et Yaakov. And what that did was that brought out from Klal Yisrael the core of who they were, which was the Avos. And that was expressed through Tefillah, because Tefillah Avos Tikkun. Let me explain that a little bit. All right. Rav Dessler explains this in Michtav Meliyahu, in Chelek Aleph. It says, what's Schus Avos? What is Schus Avos? Schus Avos isn't protectia. It's not just stam protectia. That doesn't help anything. Right? So he brings from Rav Chaim Volozhin, right, that Schus Avos basically means that when a person makes a kinyan hanefesh, Rav Chaim says that you can be moirish that to your children. In other words, just like there's physical DNA, your spiritual achievements in life create a spiritual DNA which you can actually be moirish to your children. It's unbelievable. And he says that's, Rav Dessler says that's pshat, that you had people in the Holocaust that they were totally fried. They had no kesher to their Judaism whatsoever, and when they were put in the camps, they all said Shema Yisrael with pride. He says, where does that come from? He says that comes from Avraham Avinu. That he went to the Ur-Kasdim. He was Moshe Nefesh for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and he was willing to die for that, and he implanted that into the Jewish DNA, and that still lasts. That was such an unbelievable Mesiras Nefesh that's here till now. Right? That's what he says. Here, that's what's going on over here. That's what's going on. In other words, Kol Vayishma Hashem et Kolenu. Kol is a very deep thing. Kol is when you Hakol Kol Yaakov. You can recognize as someone for Kol means a sound, a voice. You can recognize a person from his voice, irrespective of the words that he's saying. Right? It's Kol. They have that voice recognition. Yeah, the phrase that you say is irrelevant. Right? It recognizes your voice. In other words, Hakadosh Baruch Hu broke them down till their etzem, till who they were, and what was there was avostik. And there, right. In other words, here they can't have anything. They can't have any baggage. So he breaks them and strips them down till their core, and the core that was actually there, and it was there. It was that they still had this bechina of the avos there, that they were, and they turned to daven, and the tefillahs were nitkan by the avos. That was their sort of life's work. That they got to a point of that they were each able to be matakin a tefillah. That's also, by the way, that's not stam. It was just Avraham Avinu woke up and said, "Bon naseh shacharit." Right? That's not how it works. Right? That's not how it works. Tefillas avos tiknu means that Avraham Avinu's whole life was about avodah. That's what he was. He was a chefza of avodas Hashem, right? And he got to the darga where he was able to be matakin la'olam vayed a tefillah and a specific bechina of tefillah called shacharis. And Yitzchak did the same thing, mincha. And Yaakov was able to do Mariv. Each thing was a certain bechina of tefillah, right? Different bechinas of tefillah, but the reason they were able to be mataking that for Doris is because they were all about one thing, which is called avodah. Tefillah is keneged avodah. Tefillah is that you make yourself a korban. That's why it's also keneged korban. Tefillah is keneged avos, tefillah is keneged korbanos. It's two sides of the same coin. Tefillah is all about that you make yourself a korban to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Right? That's the Nefesh HaChaim is marich on that. The whole of Shah Beis is to explain that the way Tefillah works is that you turn to HaKadosh Baruch Hu as a korban. That you see, you're basically, when you're davening, you're making a statement that you see to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that you see your life as a platform for Avodas Hashem, and Memela, give me what I need, because I need things to function as an Eved Hashem. I need das, I need refuah, I need parnosa, I need tshuva, because I can't understand Torah and I can't progress in my avodas Hashem if I'm not clean. I need all of these things, and all of that is off the background that I see myself as an Eved Hashem. That's called I'm a korban. I'm makriv myself to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Right? So when you strip Klal Yisrael all the way down to their core, and what is their core? Their core is tefillah. Their core is tefillah. That's what their core was. And that was the bringing out. That was HaKadosh Baruch Hu did that, so you would bring out before what the Avos were mashrish in Klal Yisrael. avodah, and that's the whole point of the Jews. The Jew, we said this is the whole thing is that Hakadosh Baruch Hu now wants a nation that they are the Makabli Torah, they are the Avdei Hashem, they are the ones that represent Him. So yalla, we've got to bring this out. We've got to strip them out, get rid of all of the tumah. We've got to get rid of everything that they've got with them, and reveal this core of the Avos. Tza'aka, all they were was a chefetz of tefillah. I need tefillah, like David HaMelech says. Right, their whole thing was that they saw, we've got nothing. We've got nothing. All we have is our etzem, which is Avos, tefillah, avodah, and we turn to you. Now the Geula can happen. Right? As soon as they've done that, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu starts the process of the Geula. Yeah, okay, because now they've brought out this Nekuda, which is the whole background of who they are, of what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants from them. Okay. So, Vayishma Hashem et kolenu kamo shene'emar, Vayishma Elokim et Nakam v'zkonim b'Torah, et Avraham et Yitzchak v'et Yaakov, Vayaret onyenu, zu prishut derech eretz. Right. So that here the Haggadah goes back into the Shibud. Kanireh, these three nekudas were critical in bringing about the tefillah. That's why it's part of this pasuk. Right. So, Vayaret zu prishut derech eretz. That means that they were separated from husband and wife. Right. Kamo shene'emar vayar Elohim et bnei Yisrael vayeda Elohim. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu knew. Yeda is it's something that only HaKadosh Baruch Hu knew, and Yeda means chibu, right? It's chibu ish ve'isha, right? And in other words, it was a total breakdown, right, of Klal Yisrael, even on the most Kodesh level. In other words, again, right, this is something that in Torah and in Klal Yisrael, Chibur Ish V'Isha is a very, very holy thing. It's the holiest thing. It's Kodesh Kodashim, and it's the thing that brings the next door. It's the thing that is Mamshich Klal Yisrael. It's where a person has his Koach Achius, and he can actually create a Tzelem Elokim. Obviously, there's the third shutuf with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, no Shaila, right? But you can actually create a Tzelem Elokim, and that's why it's Kodesh Kodashim. And here there was an attack even there. It's just like there's nothing. Right? That's what's happening here. It can't be more than that. Right? Vedam aleinu elu abanim kamo shenemar kol haben hayelod yora tashlichu ve'rabat techayun. That's the throwing the children in the sea. And again you see this amalenu. Again it's the same nekuda. It was amul l'shem amul. In other words, there was no tachlis from the amul. That was what was happening. It was the whole thing was to break them, to work them down to their core. When a pregnancy isn't so geschmack. Yeah, for those of you that have the young Avrechim, they look as a geschmack because they are so bayot, right? The pregnancy, right? It doesn't feel good, and aches and pains and dust and sickness and everything else, and it's a headache, right? But in the end, you have a child. It makes it worth it. It's called as a tachlis to the amel. When you take the all that amelis and you throw it into the Nile, so then the amelis was just l'shem amelis. Et amalenu. It's just amel l'shem amel. Elu abanim. Vet lachatzenu ze adchak kamo shene'emar gam re'iti telachatz Hashem Mitzrayim lochatzim otam. Lachatz means pressure. That means that it was relentless. In other words, there was no time to think. Right, the Gra says that these three things make up the ikar of the Adam. Ishto kagufay, amalenu is the banim. Right, that's his hemshich, and lachatzenu he says it's harchavas hadas. The way I understand what the Gra means is the ability to think. Harchavas hadas means you need space to think. Anybody knows that when you get stuck too much in the daily grind. Right, and you just go from one thing to the other, right, and you don't have time to think. So it's not like you can't think. You need space to think, and the mind is the ikar of the Adam. That's where you think about things deeply. That's where you think about life. Well, what am I doing? Where am I going? That's where you can have some of the deepest moments, and when it's just you by yourself and you have space to think. They had none of that. There was nothing of them. It was relentless. The whole time, right? And they were broken down till they got to their core. There was literally nothing left of them, and tza'aka. That's what came out from there, right? And then when HaKadosh Baruch Hu revealed that, that's the point when the Geula starts, right? And that's where the next pasuk comes in.
Why would it be Vayeda B'nai Yisrael? Why do we wait till Al Yashut to Vayeda B'nai Yisrael?
I'm not understanding.
If they had the Akara of this, like I said, like a pregnancy, right? That something else, all the pain, something's going to come out of it, right? So if they had that now when they've been inside, because that was the point of doubting that they knew that.
No. So obviously, So obviously, here it's not in chronological order in terms of the psukim here. I'm saying the reason why. In other words, why weren't these presented before the tzaka? So I'm saying, kanireh, these three things it was either you could maybe use in other words, these three chalakim of the inui was what l'chayra brought to the tzaka. In other words, there was the general inui, and then there was these three things that were mamash, the straw that broke the camel's back that brought them to the tzaka. Right, that's why it comes in the pasuk with the tefillah. Why? Maybe that's what the Gra means. It's the ikar adam. In other words, here was where it got to mamash their core. They don't have time to think anymore. It's like you haven't even got yourself. You haven't got your own space. There was nothing. There's mamash nothing. A total. That's the lomdus of an eved, by the way. Masha kana eved kana rabbi means that you don't have your own identity. You don't have anything. You're nobody for yourself. Right? So that means an eved, his children belong to his adon. Right? He doesn't have anything. So here comes mamash. Others, they've got nothing left of them. Nothing. And the sort of the reaction that what it brought out from them was this shoresh that the Avos implanted into them, into the depths of their neshama, which was tefillah, tzaka, avdus, eved Hashem. And once they brought that out, then the Geula can happen. And that's V'yotzienu Hashem. And then HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes, and the first thing that the Baal Hagadah puts out, Lo Yedei Malach, Lo Yedei Saraf, Lo Yedei Shliach, it's HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself now getting involved.
Surely
but we'll do this tomorrow. Tomorrow I want to start. We'll take just 1 second. Tomorrow I want to start the pasuk of the Geula, right? And this is obviously the centerpiece. Right? That's the centerpiece. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu now gets involved, and he starts bringing the Geula before, right? And that's all the Nisim and everything else, right? So we'll talk about that tomorrow. So Adkan. Okay.
Surely the Shibboleth is bad in retrospect.